Hey, this is Pamela Schneider. I'm the retail editor for Blue Book Services. And Greg, wait a minute, hold up. That's not the basement.
That is not a virtual background. That's a actual vacation, legitimate pool background.
Wow. All right. Way to get out in the sunshine. Work on your tan a little.
We are going to sit down in the chair, though.
Sit down in your pool lounger.
Yeah.
Enjoy your vacation.
Got to relax in the natural light.
Well, I've been holding down the fort this week, and we've had a couple of interesting stories. The first of which is some legislation that was introduced to help businesses get paid for, unpaid debts due to COVID shutdown. And this is something that I'm sure that a lot of produce companies will be looking at, especially in light of the, $120 billion, possibly $240 billion that the food service industry has lost or is estimated to lose by the end of the year. A lot of people are interested in that, so it got quite a few clicks from our audience.
And it sounds like produce companies aren't as affected by this because PACA is such a strong thing for produce companies. I know that the people in our business side of Blue Book have been getting a lot of calls about it, and it doesn't seem to be affecting us a whole lot, or the restaurant industry, who we don't deal directly with. We deal with the produce side of it.
Yeah, especially with the Perishable Agricultural Commodities Act protection. We'll see, but it was a lot of people were very interested in that story, and the United Fresh Produce Association was a co-sponsor of the bill, along with the International Food Services Distributors Association. Another story kind of along those lines is something that you set up to run before you left the office, is our series from the Credit and Finance from Produce Blueprints is the fraud series. And people were really interested. Can you tell us a little bit about some of the stories that they're seeing? And I'm sure there's a couple more to go.
Yeah, it's a wonderful series that our writer Richard Smalley did for the latest print issue. And we turned it into a great digital series this week, and just kind of talks about what produce companies should be on the lookout when it comes to fraud, and what kinds of mechanisms and insurances that they have, and including Blue Book Credit Service, although that's not the focus of the story. Just the key things to look at. It also has an interesting thing of defining different kinds of fraud. So maybe when companies see something that's out of the ordinary, unfortunately, there's a name for that. And some of them are pretty sneaky, but some of them are also obvious. A lot of the lessons are, if something doesn't look right or feel right, you better check into it, because there's a good chance it's not right.
Yeah, for sure. And then, of course, I've been covering this week the PMA's virtual conference for Food Service Delivered. And I will be speaking today. If you head over to Food Service Delivered by 11:50 Central Time, I believe is when I get started, I'm going to be talking about innovations and what we see in retail and how that can translate over to the food service side of things.
So what's a sneak preview, something that someone could keep an eye out for?
Well, my key thing right now is the arc that many consumers have undertaken since this started is, food service used to be indulgence. Now we're looking at it as necessity, and also, please just think for me. But I want it to be in a way that I would feed my family anyway. I can't necessarily be indulging every single day. We've got to eat something besides pizza, fried chicken, and, tacos every day, unless it's tacos in my house,
Or Taco Tuesday.
Well, yeah, Taco Tuesday. But, we can't have it be indulgence food every day. So let's find a way to help families, help consumers, relieve the burden of actually having a meal plan all the time with some healthy and delicious and hopefully produce forward meals. So that's
right. That's where fresh produce can come in, and the indulgence factor. So there's so many different things you can do with fresh.
Yep, that's exactly it. And that was actually, there was a really fascinating, the coolest thing I've seen so far this week was a presentation by Data Central talking about some consumer surveying that they've done. They've got a couple of different things. They surveyed consumers on why they're eating fresh produce, and they actually had a whole list of items that consumers associate with immunity boosts, which, I talk about this a lot. And of course, the dietitian brought up with me is that you can't just claim immunity with fresh produce. There actually has to be some science behind it. But if consumers already believe that you're an immune booster right here, then
I
it's
see
a
that.
powerful suggestion. There's a whole lot of things you can do with that message. And there was a big list that I ran in a video I did with Anna Marie yesterday. And then, of course, there was another one where consumers are actually choosing restaurants right now. Taste is no longer the #1 factor in how a consumer decides on which restaurant they're going to. They're actually looking for the cleanest and most sanitary place, which really speaks to how consumers are thinking when they're out there in the wide world of whatever. So.
Yeah, well, since, as we pointed out, I'm on vacation week, I've done a lot more restaurants this week than I have. And there's definitely differences, but it's still a treat to be in there and using disposable things more often, and no salt shakers and pepper shakers on the table, stuff like that. I mean, that's the reality of what it is now.
Yeah, there was a restaurant operator who spoke today during the corporate chef keynote panel discussion where they were talking about if they had enough gloves to supply as much as recommended, it would cost them an extra $1 million a month to buy that many gloves. So this is a major concern for restaurant operators. That's a whole lot of added expense. Some of the other conversations have been revolving around labor, and labor, of course, is a huge issue in the restaurant industry. But right now, are we able to get enough people in the kitchen to produce all of the foods that are on our menu? And oftentimes, because of social distancing, they can't get enough people in there. So they've had to pare down the menus to a couple of core things that don't necessarily require as many people. The other thing that came up in this data essential was that restaurant operators are actually ordering less fresh because they're worried about shelf life. And when you think about how quickly the shutdown came last time, a lot of food service distributors, food distributors, restaurant operators got stuck with a lot of fresh items, not just produce, but also meat and dairy. And to be a little more cautious about their ordering right now is prudent, frankly.
Yeah, that definitely makes a lot of sense. And I know there's a real focus on sanitation and cleanliness. And if that becomes something that goes forward, I think that's a really good thing. I mean, how many times do you see a server or something playing on their cell phones between doing something? They're filthy.
Yeah.
You cannot do that. You should not be doing that. And hopefully it's stuff like that can get weeded out of the system and people realize that that's not acceptable at any time.
Yeah, I've actually started carrying hand sanitizer in my car, and I actually wipe down my phone when I come back in the car, just because I'm reminded of how dirty my phone is.
Well, be careful because it can be flammable.
Yeah, I saw that too, and I'm here where I live, where hot as the surface of the sun, definitely have to be careful about it. But hopefully, it's sanitizing my mask that's hanging from my rearview mirror.
Yes, that is an accessory I've seen a lot.
All right, Greg. Well, I'm going to let you get back to your vacation as I prepare for my presentation for Food Service Delivered, and we will see you next week back in the office, back in the basement. Sorry, get your tan while you can.
Yep.
That's it for the Produce Reporter Week in Review. If you are not getting the Produce Reporter newsletter, you need to go to producebluebook.com and sign up. Let me see if this works.
That's where I'm headed.
Yep. Look. Citrus shirt.
Oh, that's hideous.
It works for me.